Hey everybody, we are back and we are going to be working on some fascia, soffit, and gutter in this video. And those are all parts that go around the edge of a roof to help finish that off. So sometimes what's a little bit confusing or easy to forget is that in Revit, all of our modeling, like this roof for example, it looks like a big solid block, but the reality is that's just a placeholder for all the trusses that sit on top of that. So what do I mean by that? Well, I got a few images here to share with you. Bring them on over. So again, just to make sure we're clear, we're doing fascia, which is the board that goes around the trusses. Even behind this gutter is fascia, all along that edge. The soffit is the vented area underneath, the flat here, and then even up along the gable ends. And then the gutter, of course, is where all the rain is collected on the horizontal edges of our roofs. Okay, and then we want to collect the water, so we direct it away from the house and foundation so nothing gets flooded and cause water damage down the road. To see that stuff in a little bit more detail, here's kind of what I was saying about that roof system looking like a big slab on Revit, but in reality it's place holding all these trusses, and we're working along this light brown edge here, right along the edge of all these trusses, along the tails, they call that. And this board would be the fascia board, sometimes called subfascia. And then aluminum trim goes, or some kind of trim goes over that, eventually called fascia trim. And that fascia goes up the end. In fact, the trusses, right, to create the overhang on the gable ends, we actually have to build boards out. See how these boards crisscross? They usually connect the second truss in, or one in from the end. They go over the top of the gable end truss and overhang to create this place to attach that fascia board. And that's what we're working on here. Here's kind of a cross-section view to show what's going on here. We got the dark gray as our truss. We're putting in this soffit. Here's our fascia board out on the end of all the trusses. Now one thing to note, if you kind of see this fascia board doesn't quite go up to the top of that truss or that truss edge. And it's one thing that was kind of really bugging me in Revit. And I've spent a bunch of time trying to figure it out, and it is possible, but this just kind of being a beginner step, we're just going to kind of cheat this board up to the top and know that we're really close and discuss how it really probably would go in. You can see that just a little bit better here, how this subfascia board or fascia board, just it doesn't actually go up quite to this edge because you got to leave a little gap so the rough sheathing can extend down over it, and then eventually put drip edges on. And once we do that, then eventually we'll put our soffit underneath. This is up here is our fascia board. Again, this is a bit of a retro one, but same idea. And then finally, when you're all done, you cap it off with the fascia trim. And this slides up underneath that drip edge. And we'll hide the wood, protect it so as water runs off the roof, the drip edge, down the trim, the waterproof trim. We're not getting any wood damage as well. Now soffits and fascia boards can be trimmed at different ways at the corner. The most common here is the far right, and that's called a bird box. And that looks a little bit like this on most houses in our neighborhoods. There are some fancier versions too, but this is probably the most common one I see in houses around here. And that is just a framing technique that usually it's boxed out in wood. And you can kind of see here this guy is working on, he's got the soffit underneath the horizontal edges. He's working on soffit going up the gable ends. And the soffit all hooks in the back trim. And then you put little nails on the front edge. That's all these little pieces, every two panels is one chunk of soffit. And they kind of click together at the joint, and then you just put in a nail in each little valley. And then eventually you cap it off with that fascia trim. Here you can see this is one piece of trim coming actually around from the front. It wraps around the bird box and then back into the house. And then eventually it all gets trimmed out like this. And you always work on a roof low areas to high areas, because when you do that, these materials will overlap the lower materials, and that's what helps the water all continuously run on the outside of surfaces and away from the wood. So that's a real quick rundown on some of that stuff here. So let's try to model some of that. All right, so we are ready to add this fascia board to our cabin here. So let's go up to the roof tool hit that drop arrow, roof by fascia, and we are going to double check, see there's no other sizes in there. We want to go edit type. We're going to duplicate, click in here, and let's make this a 1x10. Click OK. Now, that's a little bit big for fascia board. In hindsight, the roof system probably should have been 2x4 system to be more like a truss. 2x6 would be a little bit more rafter-like, and I can talk about what that means in class. Okay. Sorry, so we got 1x10. We actually just got to change this board then to be 1x10. And we're just going to leave it material by category. It shows up as a nice dark gray, just kind of a little contrast helps right now when we're learning parts and pieces. Click OK. And just zoom in here, and we just want to pick this edge of the roof. And there we go. There is our 1x10 hanging down. Again, what I was talking about, ideally it probably would be dropped down an inch or so this line continued, but we're fine. Just got to let it go. And then we're just going to follow that edge actually all the way around. Shift and roller to rotate. And rotate. It usually works best to just go in a continuous pattern or line around the whole house. That way all the corners then should join up nicely and auto cut for you. Alright, so there's our fascia board. Go to a section view so you can see it from here. There's what we just added. And you don't have to jump to this, I'm just trying to show you what we were adding. Next is going to be the soffit. So the soffit is that vented area that we put here to close it out. And really what it's for is that it allows air into our attic, up through and out, so the attic can breathe and keep all the critters out. So let's go back to 3D. We are going to actually go to our roof, so floor plan, roof, double click that. There we go. I am going to change the style, the way we see this, to wireframe. So down where that cube is, go to wireframe, because that way I can just see through everything. Make sure your detail level is fine and 1/4 inch scale. Fine as the checkerboard there. The fine checkerboard. Next we will then go roof, soffit. And we are going to then edit, and we will duplicate, and we're going to call it roof soffit. Clever name, I know. Roof soffit, and I might put a little label on 1/4 inch here. That's about how thick soffit material is, maybe 3/8, but we'll go with 1/4 inch for now. Click OK. We're going to edit that structure. And right here, we're going to make that then 0.25 inches, enter. And if you want, we can make this aluminum. I think we have aluminum in here. There you go. It's very common aluminum or vinyl plastic. Click OK. And OK. And OK again. We are now ready to draw, now that we have our material set up. And we're just going to simply grab the rectangle tool. And you're going to grab the very outside corner of the house. And we're going to scroll down here, and we're going to use the wall line extended out all the way to the end. Okay, that's where that soffit's going to go. And repeat on the other side here. Very outside corner. Go down to the bottom. Use this wall line to help extend straight out to the very bottom. And then escape a couple times. So we have our purple lines, and we're kind of getting used to seeing those purple lines when we draw floors and other objects. So we're defining the boundary. And we can green check mark to say we like that. Let's go back to 3D. And we'll do a little shift roller to see what we got. And you should see them highlighted, and sure enough, they're just a little too high. So what I'm going to do is actually go back to my section view. So maybe now is a good chance to go there. And what I need to do is move these down to be underneath that fascia board. And I can just simply use the Align tool. So I'm going to go to Modify, Align, pick my reference first, so the bottom edge of that board, and then the top edge of the soffit, and then Escape. I'm going to zoom out and check the other side, and sure enough, it also moved just fine because they were all drawn at the same time. If I would have drew them at separate times, they would be separate items, but in this case, they're both connected as one. And just double checking, yep, it's all nice and flush on the outside. Eventually, fascia trim goes over this and wraps around and covers that up so you don't see the edges of your soffit in real life. I know, lots of little details, but just trying to do what we can here. All right, the next thing is gutters. So go back to 3D view. Zoom out a little bit, shift roller, so I'm kind of looking down here again. Quick little side note, kind of see how this end is open. We can see our soffit. This is where that bird box would be built, that corner framing. And I'm just not going to get into that detail with you guys. It just takes a little more tinkering and not needed right now. So architecture tab, roof, gutter, and I am fine if we just run with this 5x5 gutter. That works for me. And we just simply put it across our two horizontal edges, because that's where water gets collected. And we don't get into downspouts here either or anything like that. Just that general idea that we would collect water, we would direct it somewhere. So it's getting away from the house, protecting that foundation. It's very, very important. And that pretty much wraps it up. A little longer probably than needed as usually for me, but just trying to help give you guys a little bit of background on all these parts and pieces that go into building the house. So, all right, with that, we'll see you in the next video.